We dive into our first mock draft Monday of 2022 next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We are here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all platforms. And thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. And our sponsor here today is BetOnline. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we're back here. It is Monday. And a pretty special Monday, as it is the first mock draft Monday of 2022 draft season. Yes, I know the 2021 season was not what a lot of people wanted, a lot of people expected out of this Ravens team, but the draft is one of those avenues where the Ravens can certainly get better. And they have proven over the course of their franchise history that they are a very good drafting team. And, you know, there are some hits, there are some misses. They're not perfect, but I do think that when you look at what this team has done overall, you give it an overall score, I think that is a pretty good one. So we'll dive into our first mock draft Monday here. How this does work is I always put a mock draft on Twitter for Mock Draft Sunday, and we will be going over that. And the Ravens are making it easy this year because they have 10 draft picks right now. So that means in the first segment, we'll look at my first 5 picks. In the second segment, we'll look at my last 5 picks. Then in the final segment, we'll get into some mock drafts from people who submitted them on Twitter. And if I don't get to yours, I'll try to get to them throughout the rest of the week. And I know that we do get a lot of them, and I love reading through all of them. And even if I don't read them on the show, I look at every single one, and I really do try to get through every single one of those mock drafts. So first segment, my first 5 picks. Second segment, my last 5 picks. And then final segment, some mock drafts from Twitter. So let's dive into it here, though. Before we do that, be sure to like the video and subscribe on YouTube if you're here with us in video form. It really does help out. Our first goal is 1,000 subscribers. We've been growing at a really rapid rate, so thank you if you've already subscribed. And if you are thinking about it, I highly recommend you do so. Also, if you're here with us in audio form, be sure to just listen, continue to listen. I really appreciate everybody who's listening in audio form, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts, where they're waiting Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KOstriker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So without any further ado, let's dive in to this mock draft Monday. The first one now, I was excited about this one. I thought it was decent for my first mock draft. And look, as this draft process goes on, I will learn more about the prospects and everything, figuring it out. Just who goes where, what needs the Ravens need more in his free agency passes. We'll know definitely the needs. But so at pick 14 for the Ravens, I picked Charles Cross, the offensive tackle from Mississippi State. Now, in the actual draft, if Charles Cross is available here, it would be an absolute steal. Now, Cross is primarily a left tackle. So if he were to be drafted to Baltimore, obviously with Ronnie Stanley fully healthy, you'd want to move him over to the right side and make him your right tackle of the future. Hopefully there isn't any Orlando Brown, hey, I just want to be a left tackle type deal with him. But that was, I think, a very special circumstance. So Cross is somebody who is an absolute anchor in pass protection. That is the strength of his game. He is more of a pass protector than a run blocker. I'm not saying he's a bad run blocker, but his pass protection, it's just otherworldly. And the Ravens, you know, we saw it where Lamar Jackson or whoever would step back and both tackles would collapse around them. Whether it was Villanueva McCary, Villanueva Phillips, it would collapse around him. And I thought McCary did a decently good job over the course of 2021. But Ravens need somebody who can be that right tackle of the future. And I think the Cross is somebody who could really do that for them. And again, I doubt he actually makes it to 14 in the real draft, but to get him here at 14, especially when this is a clear need for this team, he is by far one of the best tackle prospects in this class. He's up there with Evan Neal and Nicky Ekwonu, some of my favorites. So I think Cross would definitely be somebody who would be worth picking at 14 if he is there, and then kind of moving him over to the right side and seeing what he is over there. And then at pick 45, I went on the defensive line with the trenches. So offensive trenches, defensive trenches, and picked Phidarian Mathis out of Alabama, the interior defensive lineman. Now, this is like such an Ozzie Newsome pick, right? An Alabama guy in the trenches. We know that the Ravens had that run of taking defensive tackles and drafts. And obviously, Ozzie Newsome, hailing from Alabama, is his alma mater. And obviously, the Ravens having a lot of Alabama guys. Mathis is a huge, huge player, and he's a very good run stuffer. He's somebody who will be in there to stuff the run, but also does offer some upside as an interior pass rushing presence. And he does have that gear to him. He has a high motor. And so he will get coverage sacks if they're there. And with the Ravens hopefully getting obviously their guys back like Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, that isn't a big aspect because hopefully the coverage sacks will be more than they were in 2021. But Mathis, the issues with Mathis in his pass rush right now is he doesn't really have a set plan. It feels like most of the time he's just kind of running at the guys and kind of seeing whatever works. Whereas if he can hone in on those skills, his pass rush moves, and get a couple of them, he has potential to be a true 3-down player in this league, despite, he is a bigger player, but that doesn't mean he can't do that. And I think that early on, he could definitely earn some snaps and earn some reps. I mean, if he's picked this early, and this will be a theme, if he's picked this early, obviously I think he will. But trenches in rounds 1 and 2 for me. And then you look to pick 76, and I picked Boye Mafe out of Minnesota, the edge player. I think this would be a great pick for the Ravens. Now, edge has become kind of like a sneaky need. I feel like it's getting undervalued by people. Not everybody. I understand that people think that edge is a need for this team, and I am on that boat. But you look at what the Ravens are kind of looking at the edge position right now, and Justin Houston, free agent, and is getting up there. Pernell McPhee, free agent, is getting up there. Tyus Bowser tore his Achilles. When is he going to be back? We don't know. So, look, if David Ajabo is there at 14, I think that's a phenomenal pick for him. But I think a guy like Mafe is a great pick. He had a great 2021 and is almost viewed as like more of a developmental guy. But I don't know. I think he could come into Baltimore and give them really, really nice snaps. Like a lot of people thought at Afe, I was going to be this developmental guy and wasn't going to see the field a ton. And, I didn't think that. I thought that he was going to be kind of eased in, but he hit the ground running. He did. And I think Mafe could be kind of that same player for them. He shows a lot of improvement in a lot of different areas, can do a lot of different things, not just rush the passer. And we all know the Ravens, they love that versatility. So I think with a ton of growth potential for him and with the, I think, production that you could already give the Ravens in his rookie season, that'd be a great pick at a sneaky need for them. And then I picked 99 here. I took Alontae Taylor, the cornerback out of Tennessee. Now, Taylor's 6 feet, so he's not this like hulking tall Chris Westry type guy, but he's also not this like 5'10 slot. He does play on the outside. I think that's where he is at the NFL level, in my opinion. And like he's around the ball. He's a ball player. And I think that he rounds out pretty well. He can play man, he can play zone. I mean, he does a lot of different things well. And the Ravens cornerback is a need for them. And the fact that there wasn't one taken in these first 3 picks, it was kind of like I needed to see the value. And I think Taylor at 99 is value for me. He can come in and play a role right away. I think depending on what happens with Anthony Averett and obviously Jimmy Smith and some of the other guys you're looking at, I think that if you need a guy to spell Marcus Peters or spell Marlon Humphrey for a couple snaps, Taylor could do that in a key role, or he could just learn under these guys and be a really good player for years to come for the Ravens. So I like the Alontae Taylor pick a lot. I think Taylor has a lot of upside and does a lot of things really, really well. So there are a couple of things to work on with him, but I think for what he gives you and the need, obviously, it'd be huge for them to grab a guy like Taylor, especially at a pick like 99, where I could see him going in the top 70 realistically. So it's about best player available. It's about the value you can get out of these guys and just what the needs are, of course. And I think Taylor fits a ton of those. And then finally, at 108, someone I've talked about on the show before, I picked Hassan Haskins, the running back out of Michigan. There's been a lot of controversy about how big of a need is running back, and I think it is a very big one when you consider the fact that we don't know what J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards will be coming back or when they will be coming back. I mean, I have confidence they'll be back by the start of the regular season. That's like a very, very late timeline for them, and I think they'll be good. I think they'll be pretty much back to their original selves. They'll have to get a couple weeks under them first, right? This is not just – assuming, everything goes right. I don't think this is just going to be like hey, J.K. Dobbins steps on the field and is immediately doing what he did, right? He has to get comfortable. Same thing with Edwards. They have to get comfortable. Now, that comfort level, it varies between players. one of the guys could step on the field and just be like, all right, this is cool, I'm ready. But, another could be like, I need to trust myself a little bit first. So I think Haskins is somebody who can do a little bit of everything out of the backfield and really put on a show at Michigan and was a reason on offense why they were so successful. And I think that getting him here would be an absolute steal. I know some people aren't on board with taking a running back at 108. They'd rather wait until, like 138 or 140. But I think Haskins, the talent level he has, the Ravens, they're not just going to have Dobbins and Edwards be their bell cows and then have no one else take snaps. That's usually not how it works for them. Obviously, Lamar Jackson takes away carries too, but I think the Ravens are going to rely on their third running back maybe a bit more than they would in recent years because they don't want to overwork these two guys coming back from ACL injuries. So I think a player like Haskins would be a really nice pick there at 108. But we'll head into our first break now. And when we get back, we'll be diving into my last 5 picks of the first mock draft Sunday I did here for Mock Draft Monday on Locked On Ravens. So stay tuned for that. And we will be right back. This is the time of year that people are pretty much giving up on their New Year's resolutions, but don't do that this year. Stick to your resolution to eat right if that is your New Year's resolution, thanks to Built Bar. If you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs yet, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. The Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, even the Puffs, and they contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And there are so many flavors to choose from. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We're back here with our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still hanging out with you here. And let's dive into my last 5 picks of the mock draft I did for Mock Draft Sunday for today's show, which is Mock Draft Monday. And so we'll start off here at number 117, where I picked Donovan West, the technically interior offensive lineman out of Arizona State. He is a center, though, but he does have a little versatility to move to either guard spot. Now, my position on the Ravens with guards is honestly, unless it is an all-world player with a ton of versatility to move, I don't think they need to draft a pure guard because they have, obviously, Kevin Zeitler with that right guard position pretty much locked down. They have Ben Powers, and who knows what happens with him. Maybe he is let go for cap reasons, but right now they have Ben Powers. They have Ben Cleveland, obviously, and even Tyree Phillips and those types of players. So unless the Ravens are looking to move off one of those guys, and maybe they are, I don't think it'll be Cleveland, but if they are looking to move off one of those guys, maybe they do take a pure guard. But West is somebody, obviously the Bradley Bozeman situation has to play out. If Bozeman comes back, they don't necessarily need to draft a center. I think Tristan Colon is a very viable backup. Patrick McCary can play the center position if needed. I don't think they need to spend a pick this high up, but for right now, we don't know. And so I'm kind of looking at this as a situation where at this point, I will assume that Bozeman isn't back because it is such a hole on the team if he does leave. Whereas for guard, I'm not necessarily viewing that as an absolute hole if Ben Powers leaves, so it's kind of different there. But for West, he's somebody, again, that positional versatility, does a lot of things well, pretty sound, very high football IQ. I think he's a very well-rounded player who, if the Ravens did lose Bozeman, they need instant production there. And that's why a lot of people are on the Tyler Linderbaum train because he is one of the highest graded centers in years. And he can provide that, I think, immediate day one impact, high-level play for a team that needs it. So Linderbaum is a very popular pick there at 14. That overall, that's pretty high for a center. And the Ravens, they might not need to draft Linderbaum, obviously, if Bradley Bozeman comes back. So I'm kind of in the middle there, but I think West is a very nice mid-round player. There are a couple other guys who are like more 76, 99 range, but at 117, I think West would be a great pick for the Ravens because of his versatility. The Ravens love those guys who can move in and out whenever. And yeah, overall, I think West's a great player. 126 will go with another sneaky need here in Jake Ferguson, the tight end out of Wisconsin. Now, Ferguson is known for more of his receiving skills and his blocking skills. That's not to say he can't block, but he is a very good receiver. And I think here at 126, obviously we've talked about this before where the Ravens have missed a Hayden Hurst type player over the last couple of seasons. Now, their offense is not going to go back to what it was in 2019, right? No offense is exactly alike. And the Ravens have kind of pivoted their offensive stance a little bit. So I think for what the Ravens offense was with Hurst versus what it would be without Hurst, and we've seen it for a couple years without him, I think it still rings true that the Ravens have missed that third tight end type player. And I mean, to be fair, they haven't had Nick Boyle at full strength for one and a half seasons pretty much. So it's kind of hard to gauge a little bit, but you're looking at it. And I think Ferguson, I've always wanted it in this third tight end for the Ravens, somebody who is in the middle of a Mark Andrews and Nick Boyle, someone who has good receiving skills, has good blocking skills, but isn't necessarily a lead in any one of them. And that's why I think the Hurst, to move off of Hurst was tough. Obviously, I know he wanted it and everything. It netted the Ravens J.K. Dobbins. It was the move they needed to make, but it was still really tough to lose that presence. So I think Ferguson, even though his receiving right now is a little better than his blocking, he can still get after it in that area. If a little coaching could go a long way. So for Ferguson, I think here at 126 is good value. 138, I got Jalen Petrie, the safety out of Baylor. Well, I shouldn't call him a safety. He plays all over the place, and this is an absolute steal here at 138. And obviously, I use the Draft Network simulator for my mock drafts. There are a lot of different boards out there, a lot of different simulators. People have Petrie second-round value, early third-round value. So to get him at 138 is pretty unbelievable, to be honest. I mean, he does play everywhere. He's a very versatile piece. You can line him up at safety, corner, inside linebacker. You can rush him. You can do all this different stuff with him. He's a hard hitter, can play the ball very well. He has a lot of plus attributes to him. And the Ravens, we know they love the versatility. Now, with McDonald, he's going to carry over some of those traits from Don Martindale with Mike McDonald. So I think a lot of people who are expecting this complete shift away from that, that's not what's going to happen. The Ravens still value versatility. They still want to move guys around, line guys up in different places. And we see them do it with Chuck Clark, and it works, right? Clark is that versatile piece who can line up in the dime linebacker spot. He can play strong safety. He can do a lot of different other things. I think they have a guy like Petrie on this team who can do all of that. I think he's going to go a lot higher than 138. But look, if the mock draft gives him to me, I'm going to take him. And that's across all these mock drafts. If the mock draft simulator gives the guy to me, I am going to select him. So 138, Jalen Petrie was my guy, and I think it's a great pick here. 140, just 2 picks later, we do go secondary again in Chase Lucas, the cornerback out of Arizona State. Now, the Ravens secondary could be undergoing a very big overhaul. There we go. So the Ravens might need a couple of guys in this draft who play, whether it's corner or safety. And Chase Lucas is more of a sub-package corner. He is under 6 feet, but again, very high football IQ, is around the ball a lot, is a man zone corner. But I do think that some of the shortcomings in his game is he has a few of them, but he also is somebody who brings the ball carrier down in terms of actually like bringing him down. Like he's not going to go for the here comes the boom hit stick, right? He's going to actually work to get the ball carrier down, which I know is probably music to a lot of people's ears after the tackling season the Ravens had in 2021. But yeah, I think that if you get out of this draft with a secondary of Alontae Taylor, you have Jalen Petrie, and you have Chase Lucas, I think that's pretty good value. Now, there are corners near the top that are very, very good. Obviously, Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner and Andrew Booth, Trent McDuffie. There are players like that. And obviously, this is a needs-based draft. So if the Ravens do lose Anthony Averett and they don't retain Jimmy Smith and Sean Elliott walks and they don't really address that secondary in free agency, they could go with one of those guys and say, look, we just need somebody. But I don't know. For me, I think that trio is very good. It's very underrated. And it's not like these guys are going to come in and play 80, 90% of snaps. Well, unless there's another injury year like the Ravens had in 2021. But if they are healthy, they can learn under some great players. They can play and make impacts, but it's not like they necessarily have to have this whole weight on their shoulders because this team still does have Tavon Young. It looks like Chris Westry will be back. So you have options there. Obviously, Humphrey and Peters, those are guys who are going to be back. Well, Peters isn't a guarantee, but it seems like he's going to be back. So I think Taylor, Petrie, Lucas, very good secondary rounding that out. And then finally here at 194, I picked Micah McFadden, the linebacker out of Indiana. Now, this was kind of like a tough pick for me because once we kind of fill out a lot of these needs, I'm kind of thinking, well, can the Ravens double up somewhere? I thought about taking a receiver here, but I thought it was too late. So I ended up going with a linebacker. Now, the linebacker position is an interesting one because honestly, I don't know if a guy like McFadden makes this team, but for some background on him, he's a player that plays with his hair on fire, very high effort, high motor. He's a good tackler overall, can make some things happen, a great special team type player. The issue is the Ravens have those guys already, right? Like Chris Board and Kristen Welch. And you're thinking about like, hey, if the Ravens bring back their free agent linebackers, or at least most of them, you're probably looking at 5 linebackers that are Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, LJ Fort, Josh Bynes, and Christian Board Chris Board. And that's really, I think, it. I don't see them keeping 6 inside linebackers. I think they'll just have too many other needs elsewhere, unless Christian Welch really impresses or something like that. I don't know. I see them keeping 5. So maybe if they don't bring back LJ Ford, or if they don't bring back Josh Bynes, I think they should bring both back. But I think McFadden is like that end of the draft type player who, if he has a great preseason, he can sneak on as a 53-man guy. And I'm not of the notion where it's like you waste picks. Like, I don't like when teams draft just to like draft, and then it's like, oh well, we'll get them under our control, and then we'll cut them, and then we'll bring them back, because one, that's not always a guarantee, and two, there is strategy behind it. I understand that, just to like get a guy, even if he's not going to make the team, and hope he comes back on the practice squad. But I don't know. I feel like there are other ways to use this pick. Like a receiver could be the pick, or maybe a second interior defensive lineman could be the pick, depending on the need. But I don't have enough information in terms of what they're actually going to do in free agency, because they haven't done anything. It's not happening for a couple weeks. So we'll see what happens with their needs. And then obviously these picks will be a bit more needs based, and we'll figure it out. But I think this draft overall was a very good one, and I'm pleased with how it turned out. There's some elite talent here at the top, and then you look down the list, and it's a lot of needs-based picks, but it's not just we drafted them because of need. It's we drafted them because of this, that, and the other. So I'm overall happy with this draft, and it's the first one. As we go along, I differentiate because usually I don't go with the same first round pick. I tend to switch it up so that we can talk about new guys every week. But again, there are a couple guys who are going to be my guys and who I really, really like. Obviously, Ike Ekwonu is my guy, but I'd be hard pressed to find a draft simulator, or at least on this one, where I could actually get him, unfortunately. But we'll head into our final break. When we get back, we'll be looking at some mock drafts from Twitter, so stay tuned for that, and we will be right back. Football might be over for the season, but basketball is in full swing for both pro and college hoops. For all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next Fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Hit the website today or use a mobile device to learn more about trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here with our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oshrecker, your host, still here with you. And let's dive into some mock drafts from Twitter. I'm going to look at the Locked On Ravens tweet that I put out. And we'll start off with a mock draft from Ryan Vickery, who has the Ravens taking Trevor Penning, the tackle from Northern Iowa, at number 14. At 46, Darian Kinnard, the tackle out of Kentucky. And then you have offensive linemen all throughout the rest. You have Sean Ryan, and literally every pick is a tackle. So this is a funny one to start off with. I wanted to start off with this one because there is a lot of chatter as to, all right, when should the Ravens take a tackle? Well, Ryan makes it pretty easy and says, let's take a tackle in every single spot. And I did this with receiver last year, so I love these kind of drafts. They're funny. But yeah, I like Penning. I don't know if he's a 14 overall pick to me, though. Kinnard is a very good one as well. But yeah, I'm content if the Ravens take a tackle with their first 2, max 3 picks. I think that's where they absolutely have to take a tackle. The talent drop-off is a pretty steep one after the top 7 to 9 guys. So the Ravens have to grab one earlier. I just don't think it's a guy that moves the needle enough for him. And so, yeah, Ryan makes it easy and just has him taking 10 tackles. So that's pretty good. So next here we have a mock draft from Akai, who, look at this, has the Ravens taking Ike Ekwonu at number 14. Now, this is already an A in my book. I already love it. This wins. If Ike Ekwonu is at 14, it's the greatest day ever, because he is somebody who is immediately a starter, can move inside and outside, and has a ton of positional versatility, has a nasty streak. He's everything, and he's my top guy for the Ravens in this draft. But then he ends up trading pick 102, 107, and 116 for 39, and takes Devontae Wyatt, the defensive lineman out of Georgia, at 39, then takes Boye Mafe at number 46. Darian Beavers at 78, the linebacker Mario Goodrich, the corner from Clemson, at 125. Luke Wadecki, the Central Michigan tackle, at 140. Hassan Haskins, the running back from Michigan, at 141. Then you have Jelani Woods, Virginia tight end, at 193, and Tyson Anderson at Toledo, that cornerback there at number 231. So yeah, this is a great draft. Now, obviously, it's not just the quantity that makes it good. Devontae Wyatt at 39. I don't think he's going to be there even then, even if the Ravens trade up. But if he is there, that's awesome. Boy, Mafe, we talked about. Hassan Haskins, we talked about. There's a good need balance here, right? Where it's 2 tackles, you have 2 corners, you have the defensive lineman and the edge guy, you have a running back, a tight end. I like this draft a lot, and obviously Icky gives it a a much higher score there because I love that pick. But then we have a mock draft from Nick Allen, who has the Ravens taking Jermaine Johnson the second at number 14, followed by Jalen Petrie. There we go. Jalen Petrie in the second round at number 46. Travis Jones out of Connecticut, the defensive lineman, at number 78. Tyler Smith out of Tulsa at 102. Darian Beavers, linebacker, Connecticut, at 107. Sky Moore, wide receiver, out of Western Michigan, at 116. Tariq Woolen out of UTSA, the corner, 125. Cole Strange out of Chattanooga, the guard, at 140. At 131, you have Otito Ogbonia at the defensive lineman at UCLA. Then another guy from UCLA, Greg Dulcich, UCLA, tight end, 193. And then finally Travis Dye, who is the brother of Troy Dye, the Oregon running back, at 231. So, yeah, this is a good mock draft. I think Jermaine Johnson, obviously, he shot up boards during the Senior Bowl, but he's overall a very good player. Petrie, I mean, I think he's a third-round player, so maybe a bit of a reach, but if it's the second round, I don't think it is much of a reach. Then you have the needs again: 2 defensive linemen, a wide receiver, which, can be argued whether it is a need or not. You have 2 defensive linemen, actually, and then you have a tight end, corners, which are 2, edge rusher, and a running back, which I think is very, very good overall. So I like that draft a lot. And I think Johnson, some people aren't necessarily sold on him. I don't know why. I mean, I am sold on him. He showed a ton during the Senior Bowl, and I think that's a very good way to gauge people. I mean, at least gauge prospects overall. So then we're going to kind of transition here and look at a mock draft from A.A. Burner, who has the Ravens taking Andrew Booth Jr., the cornerback, at number 14. Then Jamari Saylor, the interior offensive lineman, at 45. Nick Bonito, the edge, at 76. Troy Anderson, linebacker, at 99. Andrew Stueber, the offensive tackle, at 108. Josh Joby, the corner, at 117. Then you have Chigoziem Okwonu, the tight end, at 126. Matt Hennessing, the interior defensive lineman, at 138. Donovan West at 140 here, and then Reggie Roberson Jr., the wide receiver, at 194. And so, yeah, Andrew Booth is a player who is going to go in the top 20, absolutely, if not earlier. And I think for the Ravens, having him, like, this reminds me of these top corners. They remind me of, like, Marlon Humphrey, that pick. When people did not expect the Ravens to take Marlon Humphrey as a top corner in the class, because they had Brandon Carr, they had Jimmy Smith, they didn't need a corner. And then they took Marlon Humphrey, and everybody's like, what are you doing? Right? You don't need a cornerback right now. But the Ravens, I think a lot of people understand that, yeah, despite having Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, this team needs another cornerback. And I think Booth would be a phenomenal player in there. And then I think the rest of this draft is good also. Jamari Saylor, the interior offensive lineman, is a good pick. Then you have, again, it's the needs here. You have an offensive tackle at 108. It's a little bit too late to ignore that need, but even I will do that in some of these drafts where I'll ignore some needs to kind of see what drafts look like, with some needs getting pushed down, some needs getting pulled up a little bit. So I like that. But you do have 2 corners here. You have 2 interior offensive linemen. You have some defensive linemen. You have the edge guys, the tight end. There's no running back here. I do think that a running back is a need for them. But, hey, maybe this is the Devonta Freeman re-signs draft, and I'm all on board the Devonta Freeman re-signing train. So sign me up for that. But, yeah, a lot of mock drafts, and we'll dive into more of them as the week progresses. And just looking at a ton of where the Ravens could draft certain positions, I think it's a great way to figure out, especially before free agency, because once free agency actually happens and the Ravens, let's say they sign a safety, or they sign Bradley Bozeman back, or they swing a trade for an offensive tackle, or whatever it is, these needs are going to change so much from what they are today and what they are tomorrow and the next day. I mean, these are ever so changing things. Prospects will, depending on what happens with the combine, their draft stocks will go up, their draft stocks will go down, and we'll see what ends up happening with all of that. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. When we get back in tomorrow, we'll be continuing to dive into this Ravens team as they continue to chug along during the 2022 offseason. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.